The scream came again, thin, cracked, and wrong for the wind. Lion froze on the stone ridge as if the sound had grabbed his spine. Aryl's midday sun burned like a white coin nailed into a copper sky, and the wasteland below shimmered in waves of heat. Everything out here tried to kill you slowly. Heat, thirst, silence. And if those failed, something else finished the job. He told himself it was an echo, a trick, a vent, a wounded animal. But the next cry carried a human shape inside it. Fear, pain, a desperate kind of hope. Lion cursed under his breath and adjusted the strap on his gear bag. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even a soldier anymore. He was just a tech, paid to keep the corporation's old sensor beacons alive on a planet that ate machines for breakfast. Still, he couldn't walk away. He started down the ridge, boots grinding rock into dust. The canyon mouth waited like a split throat between jagged walls. The air inside felt heavier, colder, like the land held its breath. The radio on his belt hissed static. He didn't answer it. He didn't call base. If he called them, they'd send a drone, then a team, then questions, then paperwork, then the kind of attention he had spent years running from. He moved deeper. And he heard it again. Closer now. Lion's hand went to the heat knife at his belt, his one luxury tool, custom-built, able to slice metal when it glowed red-hot. He rounded a bend, and the smell hit him first, old blood and hot dust. Then he saw the trap. A brutal contraption of steel jaws and barbed cable, wedged between two slabs of stone like a predator lying in wait. It wasn't corporate tech. It wasn't even modern. It looked like scavenger work, military salvage welded into something cruel. Caught inside, it was a figure curled in the dirt. Not a human. Not fully. The trapped woman had pale bluish skin and hair that had once been bright, green strands tangled with dust. A metal cable pinned her leg, and the jaw had bitten deep into flesh. Blood pooled dark and thick beneath her, stained a strange violet hue. Lion's breath caught. Her eyes fluttered open, silver gold, wide with terror. She tried to speak. Only a broken sound escaped her throat. Lion crouched, careful, slow, as if one wrong move would make the whole canyon explode. "Hey," he said gently. "I'm here. I'm going to get you out." She stared at him like she didn't know if he was real. Lion examined the mechanism. Rust. Springs. A hinge that looked half-fused. If he pulled wrong, the barbs could tear her leg clean. He slid the heat knife free, thumbed the power, and the blade shimmered with faint blue heat. The woman tensed, shaking, but she was too weak to fight. "It's okay," Lion murmured. "I'm not hurting you. Just the metal." He pressed the blade to the hinge. The steel hissed, glowing orange. The smell of burning rust filled the air. With a sharp snap, part of the trap loosened. The woman gasped, pain, shock, relief, all tangled together. Lion worked like his life depended on it, because it might. Whoever set this trap might come back. And if they did, they would not be happy to see him freeing their catch. He cut the barbed cable next, slowly, inch by inch, careful not to let it spring back into her flesh. Finally, with one last slice, the jaws fell open. The woman collapsed into his arms, light as ash. Lion held her awkwardly, feeling her body tremble. Her skin was hot with fever. Her breathing came in shallow bursts. And the wound, it was worse up close, deep, angry, already swelling. "What are you?" Lion whispered, though the question felt stupid. Out here, on Aryl, asking what was the same as asking why. And why didn't matter. Survival did. He lifted her carefully and scanned the ridge above. No movement. Only wind whispering through stone. But that didn't mean they weren't there. Aryl had taught him that the most dangerous things didn't announce themselves. He began moving back toward where he had left his pack. Every step was torture, heat, loose gravel, the weight of a life in his arms. The woman, no, the alien, made soft sounds against his chest, like she was trying not to scream again. Her fingers clutched his shirt with surprising strength, as if letting go meant dying. Lion didn't speak much. He just kept walking. Because if he stopped, he might decide it was too much. And he already knew what kind of man he didn't want to be anymore. At last he reached his pack, set her gently on a flat rock, and activated the rover's remote beacon. Far in the distance, his rover's engine coughed to life and began crawling toward his location like a loyal metal animal. He grabbed the medkit and knelt beside her. The kit was designed for humans. He had no idea what her blood chemistry was, or if antiseptic would poison her, but doing nothing would kill her. He cleaned the wound gently. She jerked and cried out, thin and heartbreaking. Lion swallowed hard. "I know," he whispered. "I know. Just hold on." He sprayed coagulant, wrapped bandages, built a rough splint with a strip of alloy and tape. The violet blood seeped through the gauze anyway, but slower now. When the rover arrived, its headlights cut through the dust like tired eyes. Lion helped her limp inside, then lifted her onto the narrow bunk. He sealed the hatch, locking out the world. Inside, the cabin hummed with recycled air and soft machine heat. Lion handed her water. She stared at it, uncertain. Then she drank. A simple gulp, so familiar it almost broke him. He draped a blanket over her shoulders, then noticed the pendant at her neck, a small disc with swirling patterns that shimmered faintly, like liquid metal trapped in glass. He reached toward it without thinking. Her fingers snapped up instantly, clutching it possessively. Lion pulled his hand back. "Okay," he said. "Okay. I won't touch." She watched him for a long moment, fear still there, but something else too. Calculation. Awareness. Lion sat on the floor, back against the rover wall, and rubbed his face with shaking hands. He had come to Aral to escape people. Now he had found someone who wasn't even human. Outside, the wind rose, low and warning, like the planet laughing. And somewhere out in the desert, beyond the rover's thin metal skin, the owners of that trap were still out there. Night fell hard. The temperature dropped. The rover's sensors beeped softly, alerting him to something in the distance. Barometric pressure shifting, dust patterns changing. A storm was forming. Lion checked the power levels, the ceiling, the vents. He reinforced weak points with tape and spare polymer strips. The rover wasn't built for a major Aral storm, but he had survived smaller ones before. The alien woman slept in feverish bursts, her lips moving silently as if speaking to ghosts. At one point she whispered a sound, ragged, unfamiliar, not standard. Lion leaned in. "What?" She tried again. The rover lights flickered. And for the first time, Lion noticed the pendant glow faintly in response, like it was listening too. Then, outside, through the dusty window, lightning flashed, silent forks of white in the red storm clouds. In that sudden light, Lion saw shapes moving on a distant dune. Not animals. Not rock shadows. Too tall. Too steady. 2, 3, maybe more. They vanished the moment the darkness returned, swallowed by swirling dust. Lion's heart hammered. He turned back toward the bunk. The alien woman's eyes were open now, wide and fixed on him, as if she had seen them too. And in her expression, Lion understood something without words. Those weren't rescuers. They were hunters. And they were coming. The storm hit without mercy. Wind slammed into the rover like a living thing, sand screaming against metal, the whole vehicle shuddering as if Aral itself wanted them dead. Lion braced his feet and grabbed a support rail as the cabin rocked. Warning lights flickered amber, then red, then steadied into a dull pulse. "Hold together," he muttered, not sure if he meant the rover or himself. The alien woman stirred on the bunk, a weak sound slipping from her throat. Her skin glistened with fever sweat, her breathing uneven. Lion crossed to her side, kneeling, placing a hand near her shoulder without touching. "It's just a storm," he said, even though Aral storms had killed better machines than this rover. "We'll ride it out." Another blast hit, harder this time. The rover slid a fraction across the rock beneath it, metal screeching. Lion felt a cold knot twist in his gut. If the anchors failed, they'd be thrown into the open, into a sandstorm sharp enough to flay skin from bone. Then the pendant pulsed. Not bright. Not dramatic. Just a soft, steady glow, like a heartbeat made of light. Lion frowned. The rover's systems hummed differently now, the static on the console smoothing, the power fluctuations leveling out. He checked the display. Battery drain had slowed. "That's not possible," he whispered. The woman's eyes opened. She looked at the pendant, then at Lion. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Oh, Raoul Hunts," she rasped, the words broken but clear enough. Lion stiffened. "Hunts who?" She swallowed, pain flashing across her face. "Me." Outside, something struck the rover's hull, once, then again. Not debris. Too controlled. Too deliberate. Lion killed the interior light. They waited in red emergency glow, listening. A shadow passed over the viewport, tall and narrow, briefly outlined by lightning. Then another. And another. The scavengers weren't illusions. They had tracked the trap. Lion's mind raced. He had one heat knife, limited power, and a rover that could barely move after the storm damage. The woman couldn't run. And calling corporate now would take time he didn't have, if they even answered. The pendant brightened again, stronger this time. The rover's console chimed softly as systems rerouted themselves without Lion touching a thing. He stared. "Are you doing that?" The woman's eyes flicked to the console, then back to him. She nodded once, small, exhausted, but certain. Understanding hit him like a punch. She wasn't just prey. She was valuable. And humans, real humans, had never been helpless. Not when faced with bigger teeth, stronger claws, or smarter enemies. Humanity had survived by noticing patterns, stealing fire, turning scraps into weapons. Lion straightened slowly. "Okay," he whispered, a grim smile touching his lips for the first time in years. "Then let's show them what humans do when cornered." Another impact rocked the rover. Metal groaned. A cutting torch hissed outside. Lion moved fast. He rerouted auxiliary power into the rover's external speakers, then into the old beacon transmitter he'd repaired earlier that day. He overclocked it, ignored the warning alerts, and tied it into the storm's static charge. The pendant flared, as if approving. The speakers boomed to life. Not sound, noise. A raw electromagnetic scream that ripped through the canyon, amplified by the storm, bouncing between stone walls. The scavengers shouted outside, alien voices cracking with surprise and pain. Lion triggered the rover's emergency flare launchers, designed for rescue, not combat. They fired sideways, blasting white-hot light and burning magnesium through the dust. Shadows scattered. One figure fell, shrieking. Another ran straight into a burst of static discharge and dropped twitching. Lion didn't stop. He drove more power through the system until sparks danced along the cabin walls. The pendant pulsed in perfect rhythm with the overload. For a brief, impossible moment, human scrap tech and alien design spoke the same language. Then it was over. The storm swallowed the canyon again, but the shapes did not return. Silence crept back in, broken only by the rover's laboured hum. Lion sagged against the wall, breath ragged, hands shaking. He laughed once, short, disbelieving. "We did it," he murmured. The woman watched him, something like wonder in her eyes. She whispered a word this time, clearer than before. "Human." Lion met her gaze. For the first time since he had come to Arrel, since he had tried to disappear into machines and dust, he felt it again, purpose. Outside, the storm began to fade. Dawn crept over the copper sky. And somewhere far beyond this dead world, forces much larger than scavengers had just been alerted to a truth they would soon learn the hard way. Humans did not survive by accident. They survived by adapting. And once they chose to stand, they were very hard to stop. Morning on Arrel did not bring peace. It brought clarity. The storm had scraped the sky clean, leaving behind a pale copper horizon and air sharp enough to sting the lungs. Lion stepped out of the rover and surveyed the damage. Sand had buried half the wheels. The solar panels were shredded like old cloth. Scorch marks stained the rocks where his improvised defense had hit. No bodies. Whatever those hunters were, they had taken their dead, or their wounded, with them. That bothered Lion more than blood would have. Inside the rover, the alien woman, Alice, lay awake, watching him through half-lidded eyes. Her fever had eased slightly, though the wound was still angry and swollen. She followed his movements with sharp attention, not like a helpless victim, but like someone assessing a changing battlefield. Lion handed her water. She drank slowly. "You saved us last night," he said, nodding toward the pendant now resting against her chest. "That thing, it helped." Alice hesitated, then gave a small nod. "It listens," she said, her voice rough but steadier than before. "To what?" "Intention." Lion blinked. "You're telling me it responds to will." She closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. Human word, close enough. Lion let out a quiet breath. He had worked with machines his entire life. Sensors. Relays. Dead systems that obeyed physics and nothing else. This was different. And dangerous. He sealed the rover and started dismantling one of the ruined solar panels, salvaging what he could. As he worked, his mind replayed the night again and again. The way the hunters moved. The way they reacted to the signal burst. They hadn't expected resistance. They hadn't expected ingenuity. That was a mistake many species had made about humans, right before history buried them. By midday, Lion had a plan. It wasn't a good one. But humans had never survived on good plans alone. He rigged a temporary power patch using scavenged wiring, the beacon transmitter, and a jury-rigged wind collector made from torn alloy plating. It wouldn't last long, but it would give them enough charge to move. "We leave," he told Alice. "West. There's an old transit station. Maybe supplies. Maybe shelter." Alice's expression darkened. "They will follow." "Let them," Lion said quietly. "They already know we're not easy prey." They set out slowly. The rover crawled across the desert, every vibration threatening to shake it apart. Lion drove manually, eyes scanning the horizon. The land here was flat and open, bad terrain if you wanted to hide, perfect if you wanted to lure someone into thinking they had the advantage. As the sun climbed, Alice spoke more. Her people were not warriors. They were engineers, explorers, listeners. They built devices that spoke to systems, not through force, but harmony. The pendant was one such relic, designed to interface with unfamiliar technology by reading patterns, intent, and probability. The hunters were not native to Aral either. They were collectors. They trapped rare beings. Sold them. Studied them. Broke them. Lion's jaw tightened. "They won't stop," Alice said softly. "I escaped once. They followed me across 3 worlds." Lion didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They picked the wrong planet to finish the job." Hours passed. Heat shimmered. Silence pressed in. Then the sensors beeped. Lion glanced at the display. "We've got movement. Fast." Alice gripped the edge of the bunk. "Multiple." The hunters emerged on the horizon, sleek vehicles skimming low over the sand, moving with confidence now. They had learned from the storm. They were adapting. Good. So would he. Lion drove straight toward a narrow stretch of broken ground, a scar in the desert where old tectonic shifts had shattered the earth into jagged plates. The kind of place machines hated. The hunters followed. Too eagerly. As the rover bounced violently, Lion activated the beacon transmitter again, but this time, he didn't broadcast noise. He broadcast false data. Corporate sensor language. Emergency codes. Automated distress signatures layered over mineral scans and radiation spikes. To a scavenger's instruments, it looked like a treasure trove and a dying crew all in one. The pendant glowed faintly, weaving the signal tighter, smarter. The hunters' formation broke. 2 sped ahead. 1 lagged behind, circling. Lion waited. Then he cut power. The rover slid to a stop behind a ridge of fractured stone. Lion killed all emissions. The desert swallowed them. The first hunter vehicle roared past overhead. The second followed. The third slowed, hovering, searching. Lion activated the heat knife and stepped outside. The hunter descended, confident now, armor gleaming under the sun. Its limbs were long, jointed wrong by human standards. Its face, if it could be called that, was hidden behind a reflective mask. It raised a weapon. Lion threw the beacon. The pendant flared. The beacon detonated, not in fire, but in signal. A focused electromagnetic pulse shaped by human chaos and alien precision. The hunter screamed as its systems fried. It fell. Hard. Lion didn't hesitate. He slammed the heat knife through the armor seam at the neck, ending it. He stood there afterward, breathing hard, staring at what he'd done. He wasn't proud. But he wasn't ashamed either. Inside the rover, Alice watched him with something new in her eyes. Not fear. Respect. The remaining hunters did not return. They fled. When the transit station finally appeared, half buried, broken, forgotten, it looked like salvation. But Lion knew better. Nothing on Aral was ever simple. As they rolled into the station's shadow, the pendant pulsed again. Warning. Not of hunters. Of something older. Something buried. Something that had been waiting for humans to arrive and do what they always did best. Open doors that should have stayed closed. And use what they found anyway. The transit station loomed like a fossil half buried in sand. Its towers leaned at broken angles, metal ribs exposed where storms had stripped away outer plating. Old warning symbols, faded, half melted by time, lined the entrance. No power lights. No beacons. No welcome. Lion brought the rover to a stop beneath an overhang of collapsed alloy and killed the engine. Silence settled. Too deep. Too complete. This place was abandoned for a reason, Lion said quietly. Alice nodded. Yes. That answer did not comfort him. They moved inside slowly. Lion supported Alice as best he could, her weight heavier now as exhaustion caught up with her. The interior air was stale but breathable. Emergency strips along the floor flickered to life as they crossed an invisible threshold, reacting to movement after decades of sleep. Still has power, Lion muttered. Somewhere. The pendant at Alice's neck glowed softly, brighter than before. They followed the light. The station's main corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with broken machinery and ancient consoles fused into the walls. At the center stood a sealed door, smooth, black, untouched by corrosion. No seams. No controls. Just a faint geometric pattern pulsing slowly, like a sleeping heart. Lion felt it then. That pressure behind the eyes. That hum in the bones. What is that? He asked. Alice swallowed. Archive. Of what? She hesitated. Of failures. Lion exhaled slowly. That's not ominous at all. The pendant brightened as she stepped closer. Symbols rippled across the door's surface, responding not to touch, but to presence. To thought. Lion's instincts screamed at him to stop. Every human disaster story began the same way. We found something old and powerful and assumed we could control it. And yet, humanity had also survived because of that exact impulse. Curiosity wasn't a flaw. It was a weapon. The door opened without a sound. Inside was not a room, but a void, an endless black threaded with points of light. Data. Memory. Entire civilizations compressed into silent observation. Alice staggered. Lion caught her. Hey. Easy. Her voice trembled. This place, record species that reached too far. Built minds greater than themselves. Lost control. Lion stared into the void. You're saying this is a graveyard? Yes. And a warning. Then why does it want us here? Alice looked at him, eyes bright despite the pain. Because humans don't listen to warnings. You learn from consequences. Lion almost laughed. Yeah, he said softly. That sounds like us. The archive reacted. Light surged outward, forming shapes, schematics, simulations, star maps. Not weapons. Tools. Adaptive frameworks. Energy systems that rewrote themselves to survive hostile environments. Defensive constructs designed not for domination, but survival against overwhelming force. Lion's breath caught. This wasn't alien arrogance. This was alien desperation. They didn't fail because they were weak, Lion realized. They failed because they were alone. Alice nodded. They faced threats like the hunters. Like worse. They tried to outbuild them. Outthink them. But they isolated themselves. Trusted only their own kind. Lion stepped closer to the light. Humans don't do that, he said. We're terrible at it, actually. The archive pulsed, as if amused. Outside, the station shuddered. Alice stiffened. They are here. Lion swore. Hunters. No, she whispered. Something older. The ground trembled again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Deep beneath the station, something moved, massive, slow, and waking after a very long sleep. Lion didn't hesitate. He interfaced. Not with grace. Not with elegance. With brute force human stubbornness. He tore open his wrist console, wired it directly into the archive's external port, ignoring overload warnings. His mind flooded with alien logic, probabilities, failure trees, extinction curves. He held on. Humans had evolved to endure pain, overload, terror. This was just another impossible problem. Listen to me, Lion said aloud, unsure if the archive even understood language. You don't need another perfect species. You need survivors. You need people who adapt even when it hurts. The archive surged. The station roared to life. Defensive systems unfolded from walls that hadn't moved in centuries. Energy fields shimmered into existence, reshaping themselves based on the terrain, the storm residue, the incoming threat. Outside, the hunters' signals went wild, confusion, fear. And beneath them, something else rose. A guardian. Not a monster. A construct, ancient, scarred, incomplete. Lion felt the archive hesitate. It's broken, Alice said softly. Lion clenched his jaw. Then we fix it. He fed the archive something it had never had before. Human unpredictability. Shortcuts. Hacks. Improvisation layered on alien precision. He rerouted systems meant for 3 different purposes into one brutal, elegant solution. The Guardian stood. When it emerged from the sand, the hunters fled instantly. Too late. The Guardian did not chase. It ended them. Cleanly. Efficiently. Without malice. When the dust settled, silence returned. Lion collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Smoke curled from his console. Alice knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You changed it, she said. The archive. Lion looked up at the Guardian, now standing watch over the station. No, he said. It changed us. The archive dimmed, its purpose fulfilled. Not to warn, but to wait. For a species reckless enough to open the door. And strong enough to survive what came after. Far beyond Arrel, signals echoed into space. New patterns, new signatures. Civilizations listened. And for the first time in a long while, the universe noticed humanity not as prey, not as background noise, but as a problem. Alice smiled faintly. Welcome, she whispered, to the wider war. Lion stood. Good, he said. We were getting bored. The Guardian did not move. It stood at the edge of the transit station like a scar carved into the world, half machine, half memory. Ancient plates locked together with glowing seams, its form shaped by purpose rather than beauty. It did not look toward Lion or Alice. It looked outward, toward the desert, toward the sky. Watching. Waiting. Lion leaned against a broken console, chest rising and falling as the aftershocks of interfacing with the archive slowly faded. His head throbbed, thoughts still echoing with alien logic and human shortcuts smashed together. Alice sat nearby, her back against the wall, eyes fixed on the Guardian. It will not leave, she said quietly. Lion nodded. It's guarding the station. No, she corrected softly. It's guarding you. That made him look at her. She met his gaze, serious now. The archive did not wake for me. It woke for your species. Lion let that sink in. Outside, the sky darkened, not with storm clouds this time, but with something far worse. Lion's console pinged weakly as long-range sensors sputtered back to life. Contacts. Multiple. High orbit. Lion straightened. That was fast. Alice's fingers curled into the fabric of her blanket. The hunters were small. They served something larger. When they died, attention followed. The first ships appeared as faint points of light against the sky. Then more. And more. Not sleek raiders like the scavengers. These were warforms, massive, angular silhouettes that blocked the sun as they descended. The universe had noticed. Lion laughed once, dry and tired. Figures. First time I try to keep my head down in years. The Guardian responded. Energy rippled across its surface, not in aggression, but in preparation. The station's remaining systems synced to it automatically, as if the place had been waiting centuries for a final command. Alice struggled to stand. Lion moved to help her, but she waved him off, pain written clearly across her face but pride holding her upright. They will demand I be surrendered, she said. They will say humans are not part of this conflict. Lion looked out at the descending fleet. And are we? Alice met his eyes. You are now. The first transmission hit the station like a hammer. Alien language, sharp and authoritative, layered with threat. Lion's console struggled to translate, but the meaning was clear enough. Surrender the asset. Power down the construct. You will be spared. Lion stared at the message for a long moment. Then he opened the channel. No, he said. Silence followed. Then a second message, this one colder. You are a minor species. You do not understand consequence. Lion leaned back in his chair, boots on the console, like he was negotiating a bad contract instead of facing annihilation. You ever notice, he said calmly, that every species that says that ends up being wrong? He cut the channel. Outside, energy signatures spiked. The first strike hit the Guardian like a falling star. The construct staggered, but did not fall. Its systems adapted instantly, reshaping shields based on the incoming frequency. Alien beams curved and scattered, redirected into the desert where they melted stone into glass. Lion felt a grin spread across his face. That's new, he murmured. The fleet adjusted. So did the Guardian. So did the station. And so did Lion. He returned to the archive interface, fingers flying across improvised controls. He wasn't just reacting now, he was predicting. Human pattern recognition merged with alien probability engines. Alice watched in awe. You are not following the archive's guidance, she said. No, Lion replied. I'm arguing with it. The Guardian's movements grew sharper, faster. Not just defense now, maneuvers. Feints. Baiting patterns. The fleet hesitated. That hesitation cost them. The Guardian struck once, sending a focused energy wave through the atmosphere that scrambled guidance systems across half the fleet. Two ships collided. Another spiraled out of formation. The alien command signal spiked with something new. Fear. Lion exhaled slowly. They've never fought like this before. Alice nodded. Most species don't improvise under fire. They follow doctrine. Lion's voice hardened. Humans write doctrine in pencil. The retaliation was brutal. Orbital fire rained down, overwhelming even the Guardian's adaptive shields. The station shook violently. Consoles exploded. The ceiling cracked. Alice cried out as the pain in her leg flared again. Lion rushed to her side, helping her brace as the world seemed to come apart. We can't win this alone, she gasped. Lion knew she was right. The Guardian was powerful, but not infinite. And the fleet kept coming. Lion stared at the archive core. Then an idea, dangerous, reckless, very human, clicked into place. He opened every channel. Not just local. Not just orbital. Every band. Every frequency. Every forgotten protocol buried in the archive. He broadcast one simple thing. Human presence. Human defiance. Human ingenuity layered with alien proof. He sent battle data, adaptive algorithms, recordings of the Guardian in action, compressed and raw. A message, not of surrender, but of invitation. Alice's eyes widened. You're calling for help. Lion shook his head. No, he said. I'm announcing that the universe doesn't get to bully us quietly anymore. The fleet hesitated again. Then, new signals appeared. From far beyond Aral. Unknown. Unaligned. Watching. Listening. The alien command voice returned, strained now. Cease transmission. This matter does not concern others. Lion smiled. Too late. Above Aral, the battle slowed, not because it was over, but because it had changed. This was no longer a hunt. It was a question. And humanity had just answered it loudly enough for the universe to hear. The sky above Aral stopped being empty. Lights appeared, dozens at first, then hundreds, jump signatures rippling across the upper atmosphere like cracks in glass. Ships of unfamiliar design slid into real space, holding position at a careful distance from the hostile fleet. They did not attack. They observed. The alien command fleet faltered. For the first time since they had arrived, they were no longer the largest presence in the sky. Lion stood in the ruined control chamber, one hand braced against a cracked console, the other clenched tight to keep it from shaking. His broadcast continued to stream outward, data, proof, raw reality. Alice watched the sensor display, her breath shallow. They are listening, she whispered. Species that stay hidden. Traders. Refuge cultures. Observers. Lion nodded. Good. They should see how this really works. The alien command channel opened again, this time layered with restraint instead of arrogance. Human. Power down the construct. This conflict will escalate beyond your capacity to survive. Lion stepped closer to the transmitter. You already escalated, he said evenly. You just assumed we wouldn't respond. The Guardian below shifted, damaged but standing, its systems now fully synchronized with human input. It had learned something new, adaptation without permission. One of the observing ships broke silence. Its signal was hesitant, cautious. Human designation confirmed. Your species is recent. Why intervene? Lion didn't hesitate. Because if we don't, he replied, we become the kind of universe that lets this happen. Alice felt something tighten in her chest, not fear this time, but something dangerously close to hope. The observing ships exchanged signals among themselves, faster than Lion's console could fully translate. Probability spikes. Risk assessments. Then another voice joined. Then another. The hostile fleet backed off slightly, formations tightening, weapons still hot but no longer advancing. They were outnumbered now. Not in firepower. In witnesses. The command ship transmitted one final message, cold and clipped. This species is unstable. Cooperation with humans invites chaos. Lion smiled tiredly. You say that like it's a bad thing. The Guardian powered down its weapons but did not lower its stance. Alice leaned heavily against Lion, her strength finally giving out. He caught her, steady and firm. You did this, she murmured. You changed the balance. Lion looked up at the sky full of ships that hadn't existed yesterday. No, he said quietly. We reminded them. The hostile fleet withdrew. Not defeated, but exposed. As their ships jumped away, the observing vessels lingered, some for seconds, some for minutes, some longer. A few transmitted brief acknowledgements. Others sent nothing at all. But all of them carried the same thing away with them. The knowledge that humanity was no longer quiet. The Guardian returned to stillness, its role complete for now. The archive dimmed permanently, its final purpose fulfilled, not as a warning, but as a bridge. Lion helped Alice sit, carefully checking her bandage. The infection had slowed. The fever was breaking. You'll live, he said. She smiled weakly. Humans are inconveniently effective. Lion chuckled. We practice. Days later, a small coalition vessel landed near the transit station, medical, neutral, cautious. They treated Alis properly, with technology far beyond Lion's kit. They offered him transport off Aral. He declined. Someone had to maintain the station now. Someone had to watch the Guardian. Someone had to answer the next signal. As the ship lifted off, Alis looked back at him from the ramp. "This is only the beginning," she said. Lion nodded. "Yeah. I figured." The desert wind swept across Aral, unchanged. But the universe beyond it was different now. Somewhere far away, civilizations adjusted their models, updated their threat assessments, added a new variable. Humans. Unpredictable. Creative. Stubborn. And when pushed, loud enough to be heard across the stars. End.